They gave the widow a plot full of trash and laughed. Years later, she earns millions per month. Martha Higgins never imagined that at 71 years old, she would still have to face such humiliation. After 45 years married to Arthur, helping to build the family's assets, she found herself being treated as a nuisance by her brothers-in-law during the reading of the will. In the lawyer's office, her deceased husband's brothers didn't hide their anxiety as they awaited the division of the estate. Thomas, the eldest, drummed his fingers on the dark wooden table, while Stephen adjusted his glasses every 5 minutes. Deborah, the only sister, watched Martha out of the corner of her eye, as if she were an intruder in that setting. Mr. Sterling, the family lawyer for decades, opened the sealed envelope with solemnity. His voice echoed through the room as he read Arthur's last wishes. The main house would go to Thomas, the eldest of the 3 sons. The small apartment building in the city centre would be Stephen's. For Deborah, the commercial property on Main Street, which yielded a good monthly rent. And for Martha? The lawyer hesitated for a few seconds before continuing. To my wife, Martha Higgins, I leave the plot of land located on the outskirts of the city, near the old municipal dump, with all its belongings and existing structures on the site. The silence that followed was broken by Thomas's laughter. You mean my sister-in-law got that pile of junk that Arthur bought about 10 years ago? Stephen followed his brother's lead, shaking his head in disapproval. Poor Martha. She'll have to live in the middle of trash now. Deborah was even crueler in her words. At least she won't have to worry about cleaning the house since she'll be living in the trash anyway. The laughter echoed through the room, while Martha felt her face burn with shame. The lawyer tried to soften the situation. Mrs. Martha, the plot is quite sizable, about 2,000 square meters, and there is a structure, a shed that could be... But Thomas interrupted him. Mr. Sterling, no need to try to sugarcoat it. We all know that place is a dump that nobody wants. Martha remained silent throughout the entire process, her hands trembling slightly as she held the small black purse in her lap. At 71, she knew she didn't have the strength to fight with her in-laws. Besides, there was something more important in her life at that moment. Lily, her 2.5-year-old granddaughter. The girl had lost her parents in a car accident 6 months earlier and had been living with Martha ever since. The child was her only true family now, and she would make any sacrifice to protect her. As they left the office, Thomas made sure to rub salt in the wound. Sister-in-law, if you need anything, you can come to us. But it won't be easy to help, right? We have our own bills to pay too. Stephen added with false concern, Yeah, Martha, it's going to be hard for someone your age to start from scratch. Martha returned home holding Lily, who was sleeping in her arms. The house she had lived in with Arthur would be handed over to Thomas in 2 weeks. She would have to gather her few possessions and move to the plot she had inherited. That night, after putting her granddaughter to bed, Martha sat on the porch of the house that would soon no longer be hers. The tears she had held back all day finally streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. At 71, with a young granddaughter to raise, she found herself forced to restart her life in a place she didn't even really know. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. Arthur had mentioned the plot a few times, always vaguely. She said he had bought it cheaply when an opportunity arose. Martha had never been interested in knowing the details, trusting her husband's decisions. Now she regretted not paying more attention. 2 days later, she decided to visit the place to see with her own eyes what awaited her. She asked for a ride from Mr. Joe, a neighbor of many years who was always obliging. Lily went along, curious as any child her age. The plot was about 15 kilometers from the center of the Myrtle Beach, where they had always lived. As they moved away from the paved streets, the landscape began to change. The houses became more sparse, and the smell in the air began to bother them. Mrs. Martha, are you sure this is the right way? Asked Mr. Joe, slowing the car down. The road was getting more and more potholed, and piles of trash appeared scattered along the roadside. When they finally reached the address, Martha felt her heart race. Before her stretched an immense plot of land, completely taken over by mountains of trash of all kinds. There were torn plastic bags, broken old furniture, stacked tires, pieces of rusty metal, and an unbearable smell that made their eyes water. "Good Lord," murmured Mr. Joe, covering his nose with his hand. "How can anyone live in a place like this?" In the midst of all that desolation, Martha spotted a ramshackle structure. It was a shed with asbestos roof tiles and unplastered block walls, with some window frames missing glass and a door hanging from one hinge. Around the building, several thin and dirty animals roamed in search of food. Lily, who had been quiet in the back seat until then, began to cry. "Grandma, what a bad smell! I want to go home." The child covered her nose with her little hands, pressing against Martha's body in search of protection. "Mrs. Martha, with all due respect, but you can't bring this child to live here," said Mr. Joe, visibly shocked. "This is no place for people to live." Martha knew he was right, but what could she do? She had no money to rent a house, and her small pension was barely enough to cover basic expenses for food and medicine. Her brothers-in-law had made it clear they would not offer help. They got out of the car for a closer inspection. With each step, Martha felt her feet sink into debris of all kinds. There were remains of rotten food, wet papers that stuck to the soles of her shoes, and a dark liquid trickling between the mounds of trash. As they approached the shed, they were greeted by a pack of thin and wary dogs. One of them, a brown mixed breed with sad eyes, approached slowly, wagging its tail. It seemed less aggressive than the others. "Be careful, Mrs. Martha, these animals might be sick," warned Mr. Joe. But Martha, despite all her fear and dismay, felt a pang of compassion for the animals. Like her, they had been abandoned to their fate in this God-forsaken place. Inside the shed, the situation was even worse. The cement floor was cracked and covered with a layer of dirt accumulated over years. There were leaks in several spots on the roof, creating puddles of dirty water scattered throughout the space. On the walls, mold stains drew maps of moisture that told the story of the place's abandonment. "Grandma, I don't want to stay here," whimpered Lily, clutching Martha's skirts tightly. The elderly woman looked around and tried to imagine how to turn that space into something habitable. It would require a lot of work and money that she simply didn't have, but there was no alternative. "Mr. Joe, could you bring me a few basic things here tomorrow?" she asked, surprising the man. "Mrs. Martha, are you serious? You're really going to try to live in this pigsty?" "I have no choice," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. "This is our home now." On the way back, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional shock. Martha used the silence to think about what to do. She needed a plan, however simple it might be. That night she made a mental list of the most urgent tasks: get drinking water, electricity, clean at least a small area to sleep safely, and find a way to protect Lily from the dangers of the place. The move happened a week later. Their few belongings fit into just 3 trips in Mr. Joe's car: some clothes, basic kitchen utensils, 2 old mattresses, a few pots, and Lily's toys. All that remained of an entire life. Thomas showed up on the last day to make sure everything was okay. In truth, he wanted to be sure Martha had left the house. Seeing the mattresses being loaded into the car, he couldn't resist one last nasty comment. "Sister-in-law, when you get tired of playing Robinson Crusoe in that dump, you can look for a nursing home. I know there are some public places that take people your age." Martha didn't answer. She held Lily's hand and walked toward the car, maintaining what dignity she had left. The first night in the shed was a nightmare. Without electricity, they were in the dark as soon as the sun set. The nighttime noises were frightening: animals rummaging in the trash, winds whistling through cracks in the walls, leaks dripping incessantly. Lily cried for hours, asking to go back home. Martha rocked her on the makeshift mattress, softly singing the lullabies she had learned from her own mother decades ago. In her heart, she also wanted to cry, but she knew she had to be strong for her granddaughter. "Tomorrow will be better, my little one," she whispered into the child's ear. "Grandma will figure out how to fix everything." But when dawn came, reality proved even crueler. During the night, rats had gnawed through the bags of flour and sugar she had brought. Furthermore, she discovered there was no running water on the property. She would have to walk almost a kilometer to the nearest house to fetch water in buckets. The nearest neighbor was Mr. Miller, a man of about 60 who lived alone in a simple house. When Martha appeared at his door with Lily and 2 plastic buckets, he received her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Are you the new resident on the late Arthur's plot?" he asked, looking her up and down. "I'm his widow, Martha Higgins. I apologize for the bother, but I have no water over there and—" "You can use the backyard faucet," interrupted Mr. Miller, but then added, "Just don't go thinking this will become a routine. Water costs money too." Martha thanked him and filled the buckets, carrying them with difficulty back to the shed. Lily tried to help, holding a small bucket she had gotten as a toy, but her little legs could barely keep up with her grandmother's pace. Back at the plot, she began the first task, cleaning a small area around the shed. Using an old broom and a lot of determination, she swept the trash to form a kind of clean corridor to the entrance of the building. The work was exhausting. At 71, her body protested with every movement. Her back ached, her hands became full of blisters and cuts, and several times she had to stop to catch her breath. But she kept going, thinking that every square foot cleaned was a square foot safer for Lily. During the work, the abandoned animals watched from a distance. The brown dog that had approached on the first day always stayed nearby, as if understanding she posed no threat. "Come here, boy," called Martha, offering a piece of bread. The animal approached cautiously, accepted the food, and for the first time allowed her to touch its matted fur. "You're all alone too, huh?" she murmured, stroking the dog's head. "I guess we'll have to look after each other." That same afternoon, while sorting through materials that could be reused, Martha found several bags of discarded clothes. Most were dirty and torn, but some items were still usable after a good wash. She also found household utensils, broken furniture that could be repaired, and a surprising number of objects that still had value. For the first time since she'd arrived, she felt a spark of hope. "Lily, look what Grandma found." She showed a plastic doll that, despite being dirty, was intact. The little girl's eyes shone with joy as she received the toy. That night, illuminated by a kerosene lamp she managed to buy with her last few cents, Martha devised her first real plan. If there was so much waste there, perhaps she could sort and sell the recyclable materials. The next morning, she walked to the town center seeking information about scrapyards and places that bought recyclables. Lily went along, curious to see the surroundings. At the first shop she visited, the owner laughed at her proposal. "Ma'am, you want to sell trash? Here we only buy good material, nicely sorted and clean." "But what if I sort it properly? Paper, plastic, metal," insisted Martha. The man looked at her more closely. "Look, if you can bring quality material, we can talk, but it has to be well sorted and clean, you hear?" Encouraged by the possibility, Martha visited 2 more similar establishments. They all said basically the same thing. Clean, well-sorted material they would buy. Dirty trash they didn't even want to see. Back at the plot, she looked at the mountains of debris with new eyes. It wasn't just garbage, it was raw material that needed processing. She started that same day. She set up 3 different areas, one for paper and cardboard, another for plastics, and a third for metals. Lily played nearby with the found doll, sometimes helping by putting small objects in the wrong places. The work was disgusting and dangerous. Martha cut her hands several times on broken glass and sharp metal. She had to be careful with used syringes and other potentially contaminated materials, but she persisted, driven by necessity. At the end of the first week of intense work, she had managed to sort a reasonable amount of material. She asked Mr. Joe for help to take it all to town. "Mrs. Martha, are you sure about this? Messing with all this trash can't be good for your health," commented the neighbor, helping to load the bags into the car. "Mr. Joe, I don't have a choice. It's this or starve with my granddaughter." At the scrapyard, the owner weighed all the material and offered an amount that, though small, represented hope for Martha. It was $50 for a whole week's work, but it was a start. With the money, she bought basic items: rice, beans, oil, soap, candles, and medicine for an ear infection Lily had developed. Every penny was carefully calculated. Returning to the plot, she found an unpleasant surprise. Someone had dumped more trash during her absence. Bags and bags of new debris were scattered over the area she had cleaned with so much effort. "Who did this?" she asked aloud, more to herself than expecting an answer. The answer came from Mr. Miller. who passed by the plot late in the afternoon. "Oh, it's the city folks. They always dump the collected trash here. It's been like this for years." "But how can that be? This plot isn't the city dump." "To them, it's all the same. It's a place far from town, nobody complains, so they dump it here anyway. You'll have to get used to it." Martha felt a growing anger rise in her chest. Not only had she inherited a plot full of garbage, but they also had to live with more trash being dumped there regularly. That night, lying on the mattress next to Lily, she thought about giving up. Maybe her brothers-in-law were right. Maybe it would be better to look for a nursing home and put her granddaughter up for adoption. But when she looked at the child's sleeping face, she knew she couldn't give up. Lily had lost her parents. She couldn't lose her grandmother too. The next morning, she had a bold idea. If the city was using her plot as a dump, they should at least pay for it. She decided to go to City Hall to try to talk to someone in charge. The City Hall building was in the town's central square. Martha had never been inside, but she decided she had nothing left to lose. She put on her best clothes, combed her hair carefully, and took Lily by the hand. The receptionist greeted her coldly when she explained her problem. "Who exactly do you want to speak with?" "With whoever is in charge of garbage collection. They are dumping trash on my plot without permission." After nearly an hour of waiting, she was seen by an employee named Mr. Jenkins, who was responsible for the urban sanitation department. The middle-aged man with a prominent belly barely looked up from his papers when she entered the room. "What exactly are you complaining about?" he asked, visibly impatient. Martha explained the situation, but Mr. Jenkins interrupted her several times. "Ma'am, that plot has been used as a dump for years. If you inherited it, you inherited the problem along with it." "But there's no document authorizing this. It's my property." "Look, you can complain all you want, but we don't have another place to take the collected garbage. It's either there or it'll be scattered through the town's streets." Martha took a deep breath and made her proposal. "What if I organize the trash you dump there? Separate everything properly. Do an organized job." Mr. Jenkins finally looked up from his papers. "How do you mean?" "I separate the recyclable materials, organize everything, keep the place cleaner. In return, you pay me a monthly fee." The employee laughed. "You want the city to pay you to mess with garbage? You're using my plot for free. At least pay something for it." Mr. Jenkins thought for a few moments. The idea was absurd, but if that old woman wanted to work herself to death in the middle of the trash, that was her problem. And if she organized everything, it would make the sanitation workers' jobs easier. "How much do you want?" Martha didn't know how to answer. She had no idea what fair rates were for this kind of work. $300 a month. 300? You're crazy. 100 at most. It was Martha's turn to laugh. $100 to organize tons of garbage a month. No, thank you very much. After some back and forth, they reached an agreement. $150 a month, plus the right to sell any recyclable materials she managed to separate. Leaving City Hall, Martha felt victorious for the first time in a long while. It wasn't much money, but together with the sale of recyclables, she might be able to survive with dignity. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The first official garbage load arrived 3 days later. A truck dumped tons of bags at the entrance to the plot, raising a cloud of dust and a stench that made Lily run inside the shed. Martha looked at the mountain of debris and took a deep breath. This was her job now. She put on makeshift gloves made from plastic bags, tied a cloth over her face as a mask, and began to sort. The work was much heavier than she had imagined. Each bag had to be opened, the contents separated by material type, and then everything had to be cleaned before being stored. Her back ached terribly, and she had to stop to rest several times. But as she worked, she developed a system. First, she sorted the bags by weight and appearance. The lighter ones usually contained paper and plastic, the heavier ones metals and glass. This way she optimized the time spent on each category. The brown dog, which she had named Buddy, became her constant companion during the work. The animal seemed to understand that she posed no threat, and even helped by barking when it found something interesting among the debris. Lily also created her own way of helping. She played at sorting small, colourful objects, making neat little piles she called treasures. The child had adapted to that unusual life better than Martha had expected. By the end of the first official week of work, Martha had sorted an impressive amount of materials: paper, cardboard, various types of plastic, aluminum, iron, copper, and even some bronze pieces that looked valuable. She took everything to the scrapyard and had a pleasant surprise. The owner, Old Tony from the scrapyard, was impressed with the quality and organization of the material. "Mrs. Martha, did you sort all this by yourself?" "With my granddaughter's help," she replied proudly. "Look, I'll be honest with you. This is the best sorted material I've ever received here. If you can maintain this quality, I can pay a bit more than the usual price." The money from this first official sale, combined with the $150 from the city, came to almost $400. It was little by normal standards, but it represented a fortune for someone who had arrived there with nothing. With part of the money, Martha bought basic construction materials: some planks, nails, a plastic tarp. She wanted to improve the conditions of the shed before winter arrived. She worked on weekends to plug the biggest gaps in the walls and fix part of the roof. It wasn't professional work, but it significantly improved the comfort of the place. She also bought a small gas stove and some basic kitchen utensils. For the first time since she had arrived, she managed to prepare a decent hot meal for herself and Lily. "Grandma, it's delicious!" exclaimed the girl, savoring the beans and rice with a small piece of meat that Martha had managed to buy. At that moment, seeing her granddaughter's genuine joy, Martha felt she was on the right track. It was little, but it was progress. Mr. Miller, the closest neighbour, began to observe the changes with growing interest. One day he appeared on the plot during Martha's work. "Mrs. Martha, can I make a suggestion?" "Of course, Mr. Miller, any help is welcome. You're sorting everything very well, but you could earn more money if you processed some materials before selling." "How so?" The man explained that some types of plastic were worth more if cleaned and pressed. Metals like aluminum had different prices depending on purity, and cardboard yielded more if flattened and stacked properly. "Where can I learn these things?" asked Martha. "I worked at a scrapyard years ago. If you want, I can teach you a few things." That's how an unexpected partnership began. Mr. Miller visited the plot regularly and taught techniques to improve the value of the sorted materials. In return, Martha shared with him a small percentage of the extra profits earned. With the neighbors' teachings, Martha's monthly income increased to over $600. It was still little, but it already allowed for some improvements in their quality of life. She bought new clothes for Lily, more suitable toys, and even managed to install a small electric shower in the shed. A hot shower after a whole day dealing with trash became a luxury she immensely appreciated. She also began to take better care of the animals that roamed the plot. Besides Buddy, there were 3 more dogs, 2 cats with kittens, and some chickens that had been abandoned there. "Grandma, why do you feed the animals?" Lily asked one day. "Because they need care too, my dear, and they protect us as well." It was true. The dogs had become natural guardians of the plot, scaring off strangers who sometimes came to dump trash outside the hours established with the city. The chickens, in turn, provided fresh eggs almost daily. Lily loved searching for the eggs hidden among the planks and crates, turning the task into a daily treasure hunt. 3 months after the start of the official work with the city, Martha received an unexpected visit. A well-dressed woman stepped out of an official car at the entrance to the plot. "Are you Mrs. Martha Higgins?" asked the visitor. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "I'm Karen Fletcher, a social worker from the city. I received a complaint about a child living in inadequate conditions at this location." Martha's heart raced. She knew exactly who had made the complaint. Her in-laws couldn't accept the fact that she was managing on her own. "May I see where the child sleeps and plays?" asked Karen, looking around with a concerned expression. Martha showed the inside of the shed, which had improved significantly since her arrival. There was an organized little corner for Lily, with toys, clean clothes, and a comfortable bed. "And food? Is the child attending school?" continued the social worker. "She eats well, as you can see, and about school she's still only 2.5, but I'm planning to enroll her in the municipal daycare when she turns 3. Karen made several notes on her clipboard. Mrs. Martha, I'll be direct with you. These conditions are not ideal for a child. The environment is unhealthy, dangerous. I'm giving you 60 days to improve the situation, or I'll have to take the appropriate measures. What measures? Asked Martha, fearing the answer. The child may need to be removed from your care and placed with a foster family. Martha felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Lily was all she had in life. She couldn't lose her, too. Please, give me a chance. In 60 days I can improve this situation a lot. I hope so, Mrs. Martha, for everyone's sake. That night, after putting Lily to sleep, Martha cried as she hadn't cried since Arthur's death. The possibility of losing her granddaughter terrified her more than any financial hardship. But when the tears dried, she stood up with a fierce determination. 60 days. She had 60 days to turn that place into something decent. The next day, she worked with an energy she didn't know she still possessed. She sorted materials for 18 hours straight, stopping only to feed Lily and put her to sleep. Mr. Miller, noticing his neighbor's desperation, offered extra help. Mrs. Martha, if you need, I can work a few hours a day here. We split the profits. The offer was gratefully accepted. With 2 people working, the output doubled in a week. But Martha knew she needed something more dramatic than simply increasing production. It was then that she had an idea. During the sorting work, she had noticed that a company in the region regularly discarded electronic equipment, old computers, printers, televisions, sound systems, all thrown out as regular trash. She decided to investigate further. She separated all the electronics she found and took some items to old Tony from the scrapyard. Mrs. Martha, where did you get this? Asked the merchant, examining a computer motherboard. From the trash I sort. Why? These materials here are worth much more than common scrap. There are precious metals, components worth good money. Old Tony explained there was a specialized market for electronic waste, companies that specifically bought this type of material to extract precious metals and valuable components. If you can get a good amount of this material, I can broker the sale with these companies. It'll yield much more than selling it as common scrap. Martha returned home with her eyes shining. She had found her gold mine in the middle of the trash. In the following weeks, she focused specifically on separating and storing electronic waste. Computers, televisions, sound systems, cell phones, chargers, wires, everything that contained electronic components was carefully separated and catalogued. Mr. Miller helped build makeshift shelves to organize everything. The shed began to look like an organized warehouse instead of a simple shelter. When she gathered a significant amount, old Tony brokered the sale with a specialized company from the capital. The result was surprising, more than $2,000 from a single sale. It was enough money to completely transform the living conditions on the plot. Martha immediately invested in construction improvements. She hired a bricklayer to build a small extension at the back of the shed, creating a separate little room for her and Lily. She installed a basic bathroom with a toilet and shower. She bought new roof tiles to definitively fix the roof. She also fenced off a small area around the building, creating a clean and safe space where Lily could play without the risk of getting hurt in the trash. When the social worker returned for the inspection, 45 days later, she found a completely different reality. What was once a precarious shed now looked like a modest little house, but clean and organized. "Wow, Mrs. Martha, what a transformation!" exclaimed Karen, visibly surprised. "I said I would improve it," replied Martha proudly. The inspection lasted almost 2 hours. Karen checked the hygiene, food and safety conditions, and even talked with Lily to assess her development. "The child seems healthy and happy," concluded the social worker, "and these facilities, although simple, meet the minimum criteria for habitability." "Does that mean I can keep my granddaughter?" "For now, yes, but I will continue with follow-up visits." That night, Martha and Lily celebrated with a special dinner: roast chicken, saffron rice, Brazilian-style beans, and even a small chocolate pie she had bought in town. "Grandma, our house is beautiful," said Lily, clapping her little hands with joy. "It is our house indeed, my little one. No one will separate us anymore." The news of the improvements reached the in-laws' ears, and they showed up at the plot on a Sunday afternoon. Thomas, Stephen and Deborah got out of the car with expressions of disbelief. "Sister-in-law, "We heard you've been fixing up this place," began Thomas, observing the changes. "As you can see, I managed to sort things out here," replied Martha, not hiding the pride in her voice. "But with what money? Where did you get the money to do all this?" insisted Deborah, clearly suspicious. Martha explained about the recycling work and the discovery of the electronic waste market. The in-laws listened with growing skepticism. "You're trying to tell me you're making money by messing with trash?" laughed Stephen. "Not just making money, but improving my life," Martha replied calmly. "This won't last, sister-in-law. You'll see that soon this recycling fad will end, and then you'll be in misery again," prophesied Thomas. But the in-laws were wrong. In the following months, Martha's business only grew. The company that bought electronic waste increased the frequency of purchases, impressed with the quality and organization of the material supplied. Other companies in the region began seeking her out directly, offering exclusive contracts to collect their electronic waste. In a short time, she needed to hire help to handle all the work. She first hired Mrs. Pearl, a 60-year-old woman who was also facing financial difficulties. Then, Mr. Miller left his meager retirement to work full-time on the plot. The place gradually transformed. The work area was expanded, with organized benches for each type of material. A small office was built to manage sales and inventory. Lily, who had turned 3, was enrolled in the best private daycare in town. The little girl loved telling the other children about Grandma's job with treasures hidden in the trash. One day, an environmental engineer named Michael Crawford appeared at the plot. He had heard about Martha's work and wanted to see the operation up close. "Mrs. Martha, you have a very well-organized little recycling center here," commented Michael, observing the work with a technical eye. "Thank you, we're always trying to improve. May I make a suggestion? With some technical changes, you could significantly increase productivity and the value of the processed materials." Michael explained techniques for washing plastics, pressing cardboard, and more refined metal separation. He offered free consultancy in exchange for the opportunity to study the model to replicate it elsewhere. The partnership proved extremely beneficial. With the improvements suggested by the engineer, Martha's monthly income jumped from a few thousand to over $10,000 monthly. It was enough money to invest in more sophisticated equipment. She bought a cardboard baler, special washing machines for plastics, and even a small conveyor belt to speed up sorting. The plot, which was once a source of shame, began attracting positive attention. Local journalists visited the site to do stories on entrepreneurship and sustainability. A television program about small businesses featured Martha in a special segment on life transformation. The report showed the plot's evolution from the early days to its current state. "I never imagined that at 70 years old I'd be starting a new career," Martha told the cameras, smiling as Lily played in the background. The story's impact was surprising. Companies from across the state began contacting her to send their recyclable waste. The small family business became a regional reference in recycling. With growing demand, Martha needed to expand the operation. She bought the neighboring plot and built a larger, more modern shed. She hired more employees, all local residents who were unemployed. Michael, the environmental engineer, proposed a more formal partnership. Together they created a consulting company to help other people set up similar recycling centers. "Mrs. Martha, you've created a model that can be replicated in hundreds of Mexican cities," explained Michael during a planning meeting. "Do you really think other people could do what we did here? With proper guidance and determination like yours, I'm sure they can." The first branch of Hope Recycling, a name chosen by Lily, was opened in a neighboring town. Martha personally trained the new operators, teaching all the techniques she had developed. The success was immediate. Within 6 months, the second unit was processing volumes similar to the original. Soon, requests came to open branches in other regions. 2 years after arriving at the plot with just a few belongings and a granddaughter in her arms, Martha was leading a network of recycling centers, generating over $100,000 monthly. The physical transformation of the original plot was impressive. What was once a smelly garbage dump was now a clean, organized industrial complex, with gardens cultivated in the open areas. The animals she had adopted in the early days were still there, but now lived in dignified conditions. Buddy, the first dog that had greeted her, had become a sort of company mascot. even getting his own little house with his name engraved at the entrance. Lily, now 5 years old, attended the best private school in the region and showed an early interest in the family business. She loved showing visitors how each step of the recycling process worked. "One day I'm going to work here with Grandma," she said proudly to anyone who would listen. Her brothers-in-law, who had mocked her so much at the beginning, now hovered around the property with very different expressions. Thomas was the first to approach, asking for a job at the company. "Sister-in-law, I know I didn't treat you very well in the past, but I'm unemployed now, and I thought maybe there might be an opportunity for me here." Martha looked at him calmly before answering. "Thomas, you can work here, yes, but you'll start like everyone else, sorting material on the production line." It was a lesson in humility that Thomas would never forget. The man who had inherited the family's main house now worked as an employee for the sister-in-law, who had received only a plot full of trash. Stephen and Deborah soon followed their brother's example, also asking for jobs. Martha hired them, but always made it clear that there they were just employees, not partners or special associates. A national television program discovered the story and invited Martha to participate in a special on entrepreneurship in later life. The appearance was a success, inspiring thousands of people across the country. "The message I want to leave," Martha said during the program, "is that it's never too late to start over. At 70 years old, when everyone thought I was finished, I found a new reason to live." Business people from various parts of Brazil got in touch offering partnerships and investments. A large multinational company proposed buying the network of recycling centers for a multi-million-dollar sum. "Mrs. Martha, this is an offer that could change your life," the executive explained during the presentation. "My life has already changed," she replied, smiling. "And it changed because I learned that the value of things isn't in what they appear to be, but in what we can do with them." Martha refused the buyout offer, but accepted a partnership to expand the concept of community recycling centers nationally. The multinational would provide investment and technology, while she and Michael would handle training and management. Within 3 years, the Hope Recycling Network was present in more than 50 Brazilian cities, generating thousands of direct and indirect jobs. Martha had become a national reference in sustainability and social entrepreneurship. The original plot, the one the brothers-in-law had considered a useless gift, was now the center of an operation that processed hundreds of tons of recyclable material per month, earning more than $2 million monthly. Lily, now 8 years old, had become a minor local celebrity. She regularly participated in her grandmother's talks, telling her version of the transformation story she had witnessed since she was a baby. "My grandma taught me that trash doesn't exist," the girl said during the presentations. "There are just things in the wrong place waiting for someone to put them in the right place." The child's simple wisdom impressed audiences of business people and academics, showing how deeply that experience had marked her upbringing. On a sunny Saturday morning, 5 years after her arrival at the plot, Martha was watering the garden plants when she spotted a familiar car approaching. It was Karen, the social worker, who had threatened to take Lily away from her care. "Mrs. Martha, what a joy to see you," exclaimed Karen, getting out of the car with a genuine smile. "Karen, what a wonderful surprise. How are you? I came here because I couldn't believe what people have been telling me about this place. My, what an incredible transformation." The two women walked through the complex, which now occupied an area of over 50,000 square feet. Modern warehouses, well-kept gardens, employees working in an organized and productive manner. "Remember when I said the conditions weren't suitable for a child?" asked Karen, a little embarrassed. "I remember well, and you were right at the time. But look at this now. Lily not only has suitable conditions, but has an inspiring life example. How many children can say they helped build a family business since they were a baby?" Lily came running out, returning from one of her explorations of the plot. The girl had grown up there, knew every corner, every employee, every process. She was truly a part of that place. "Aunt Karen, do you want me to show you how our factory works?" offered the girl, using the term she herself had invented to refer to the recycling center. During the afternoon, Lily guided Karen through the entire complex, proudly explaining each step of the work. The girl knew technical details that impressed even the social worker. Mrs. Martha, can I make a confession? Asked Karen when they were saying goodbye. Of course. When I received that first complaint about Lily, I thought it would be a typical case. Child at risk, grandmother unable to raise her. I came here certain I would have to take drastic measures. And you almost did, Martha recalled. That's true. But today I see I would have made a terrible mistake. Lily is not only well cared for, but is receiving a life education that no amount of money can buy. She is learning that honest work and determination can move mountains, or in our case mountains of trash, Martha joked. Exactly. And she's learning to see opportunities where others see only problems. That night during the family dinner, Martha reflected on the extraordinary journey she had lived through in recent years, from a humiliated widow with no prospects to a successful businesswoman and national reference. "Grandma, are you sad?" asked Lily, noticing her grandmother's thoughtful silence. "No, my little one. I'm remembering when we arrived here. You just a tiny thing, and me thinking the world had ended for us. But it didn't end, right? Not only did it not end, but a new life began. Much better than I ever dreamed. And it all started with that stinky trash," laughed Lily. "That's right. That stinky trash was our salvation." The following Sunday, Martha received another unexpected visit. This time it was Mr. Sterling, the lawyer who had read Arthur's will years before. "Mrs. Martha, I hope you don't mind my visit. I heard about the transformations happening here and needed to see it with my own eyes." "Mr. Sterling, what a joy to see you again. Please come in." The lawyer, now older but still elegant, walked through the complex with growing admiration. He stopped every moment to ask questions about the processes, the equipment, the logistics. "Mrs. Martha, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course, Mr. Sterling." "Did you ever resent your Arthur for leaving you only this plot?" Martha thought carefully before answering. "At first, yes. I thought he had abandoned me in an impossible situation. But today I understand that he left me exactly what I needed." "How so?" "If he had left me a ready-made house, some money in savings, I would have continued being the same person as always. Dependent, insecure, without purpose. This plot forced me to discover strengths I didn't even know I had." Mr. Sterling nodded thoughtfully. "I knew your Arthur for many years. He was a man who thought deeply before making any decision. Perhaps he knew you were stronger than you imagined. Do you think he did it on purpose?" "I can't say for sure, but your Arthur always used to say a phrase that stuck with me. The greatest gift we can give someone isn't solving their problems, but giving them the opportunity to discover they can solve them on their own." Martha felt her eyes well up. For the first time, she considered the possibility that Arthur hadn't acted out of a lack of love, but out of a wisdom she was only now able to understand. "Mr. Sterling, may I ask a question about the will?" "Of course." "Did the brothers-in-law know there was a clause about making the plot productive?" The lawyer smiled. "Yes, they did. That's why they were so pleased when you inherited that area. They thought you'd never be able to meet the condition." "What condition?" "Your Arthur stipulated that you would only gain permanent rights to the plot if you managed to make it productive within 5 years. Otherwise, the property would be divided among his brothers." Martha was stunned. "I didn't know that. I chose not to mention it at the time to avoid putting more pressure on you, but now I can say you not only met the condition, you exceeded any expectation your husband could have had. How much time is left to complete the 5 years? 4.5 years have already passed. Only 6 months remain. And the brothers-in-law, do they know?" "They know. And they're terrified. They've realized they not only lost their chance to get the plot, but they now work for you as employees." Martha laughed at the irony of the situation. The same brothers-in-law who had mocked her inheritance now depended on it to survive. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, who are just starting out. Now continuing. The news that only 6 months remained until the property was permanently consolidated gave Martha renewed energy. She decided she wanted to celebrate the date in a special way, showing everyone in the region how an abandoned plot had transformed into a symbol of hope and prosperity. She organized a big event to mark the 5 years of transformation. She invited local authorities, business people, journalists, and all the people who had been part of her journey. The preparations took weeks. The entire complex was decorated, commemorative plaques were installed, and even a small photo exhibition was set up showing the evolution of the place from the early days. Lily, now 9 years old, insisted on giving a speech during the event. "I want to tell everyone what it was like here when we arrived," she said determinedly. On the day of the celebration, over 500 people attended. The mayor of the town made a point of being present, as did representatives from the partner multinational company and dozens of other business people. 5 years ago, Martha began in her speech, I arrived here with a granddaughter in my arms and a few bags of clothes. Everyone thought I was finished. I thought so myself. The audience listened in reverent silence. But I discovered that no matter our age, no matter how many times life knocks us down, we can always get back up and start over. We can always turn trash into treasure. The applause echoed for several minutes. When it finally subsided, it was Lily's turn to climb onto the makeshift stage. "My name is Lily, and I've lived here since I was a baby," the girl began, with the confidence of someone who had grown up in the spotlight. "When we arrived, this place was very smelly and had a lot of trash. My grandma cried every night, but I didn't know why. Now I know she cried because she was scared." The girl made a theatrical pause that drew smiles from the audience. "But my grandma is very brave. She took all that stinky trash and turned it into a beautiful company. And you know what I learned? That there is no trash in the world. There are only treasures in the wrong place." The applause was even longer and more enthusiastic. Several people had tears in their eyes. After the official ceremonies, there was a big gathering. Employees, partners, authorities, and neighbors celebrated together what had become a landmark in the small coastal town of Myrtle Beach. During the party, Martha was approached by a documentary producer from São Paulo. "Mrs. Martha, we would like to make a documentary about your story. We believe it can inspire thousands of people across the country." "A documentary?" "Yes. We will follow your routine for a few weeks, interview people who were part of your journey, show the before and after. It will be a serious work aimed at educational channels." Martha accepted the proposal, seeing an opportunity to further spread the concept of community recycling. The filming lasted 2 months. Cameras followed Martha in her daily routine, recorded testimonials from employees, neighbors, clients, and authorities. Lily turned out to be a little natural star, stealing the scene whenever she appeared. The documentary, Extraordinary Waste, The Martha Higgins Story, was released on educational channels and digital platforms, reaching a national audience. The impact was surprising, generating thousands of comments and messages of support. Universities began to seek Martha out for lectures on social entrepreneurship. Government agencies requested consultancy to implement similar projects in other regions. The story gained international dimension when an American magazine specializing in sustainability published an article about the Brazilian recycling miracle. Invitations for lectures abroad began to arrive. "Grandma, you're famous!" exclaimed Lily, flipping through a magazine that had Martha's photo on the cover. "We are famous, my little one. This story is ours, not just mine." "That's true. I'm important in the story, too." 6 months after the celebration, the official day for the consolidation of the property arrived. Mr. Sterling attended in person to deliver the final documents. "Mrs. Martha, it is with great pleasure that I give you the definitive deed to this property. The condition established by your husband was fulfilled in an extraordinary way." Martha held the papers with trembling hands. At 76 years old, she was officially the owner of an industrial complex valued at several $1 million. "Mr. Sterling, can I confess something?" "Of course. If I had known about the condition from the start, I might not have had the courage to try. Sometimes it's better not to know all the obstacles we have ahead." "Your Arthur thought of that too. That's why he requested secrecy about the clause." That night, alone in the office she had built on the site, where there was once only trash and desolation, Martha took stock of her extraordinary journey. In 5 years, she had transformed an abandoned plot into a company that earned more than $3 million annually. She had directly created 50 jobs and indirectly hundreds of others. She had inspired the creation of dozens of recycling centers across the country. More important than all of that, she had proven to herself that age is no limit to starting over, that determination can move mountains, and that often our biggest problems are, in fact, our greatest opportunities. Lily, now 10 years old, had grown up seeing that honest work and persistence could transform any reality. The girl spoke fluently about sustainability, the circular economy, and social entrepreneurship, concepts she had learned in practice since she was a baby. Her brothers-in-law, who once mocked her inheritance, now depended on the salary she paid them. Thomas had become an exemplary employee, dedicating himself to the work with a humility that surprised everyone. "Sister-in-law," he said one day during a work break, "I owe you an apology for how I treated you in the past." "Thomas, the past is in the past. What matters is what we do from now on. You gave me an opportunity I didn't deserve. And more than that, you taught me that it's never too late to learn humility. We are all always learning. I've learned a lot these years too." Stephen and Deborah followed their brother's example, apologizing for their past malicious comments. The family, once divided by greed, was now united around the common work. One day, a delegation of Japanese businessmen visited the complex, interested in replicating the model in their country. They were impressed not only with the operational efficiency, but with the human and social aspect of the project. "In Japan, we have a lot of recycling technology," commented the delegation leader through a translator, "but you have something technology cannot create, a human soul in the process." The observation touched Martha deeply. She had discovered that the business's success was not just in technical efficiency, but in caring for people, employees, clients, the community. Every employee hired had a story of overcoming. Mrs. Pearl, the first employee, had come from a situation of extreme poverty. Mr. Miller had found in recycling a more dignified retirement. Dozens of others found there not just a job, but purpose and dignity. "Grandma," Lily asked one day, "why don't you want to sell the company to those people who offer a lot of money?" "Because money isn't everything, my dear. This company isn't just a business. It's our extended family. It's proof that we can transform any situation." "But if we sold it, we'd be rich, right?" "We are already rich, Lily. Rich in experiences, in relationships, in life's purpose. That kind of wealth can't be bought or sold." The girl reflected for a few moments before answering. "I understand. Our wealth isn't in the money, it's in what we do with it." "Exactly. And in what we learn by doing what we do." At 77 years old, Martha had become a national reference in sustainability and social entrepreneurship. She received dozens of monthly invitations for lectures, consultations, and event appearances. But her greatest joy remained the daily work at the complex, seeing employees grow professionally, watching processes improve, discovering new ways to add value to recyclable materials. "Every day here is a new discovery," she often said in interviews. "At 77, I still wake up curious to see what we'll find in today's trash." The phrase became her trademark, repeated in articles, documentaries, and news stories. A national television program decided to do a year-end special on stories of overcoming. Martha was chosen as the central character for an episode titled "From Trash to Treasure: How a Grandma Became a Millionaire Businesswoman." The filming brought unusual activity to the complex. Camera, lighting, and sound crews turned the place into a real television studio for a few days. Lily, now 11 years old and completely at ease in front of the cameras, stole the scene once again with her naturalness and precocious intelligence. "People think our story is about trash," the girl said during an interview, "but it's really about hope. It's about not giving up even when everything seems impossible." The program aired on Christmas Eve and broke viewership records. Thousands of people sent messages of affection and admiration. Many shared their own stories of overcoming, inspired by Martha's example. One of these messages particularly touched the businesswoman's heart. It was from a 65-year-old widow who had lost everything in a family financial crisis. "Mrs. Martha," the letter said, "watching your story gave me the strength to start over. I'm setting up a small sewing business at home and already have 3 regular clients. I know I won't become a millionaire like you, but I learned that the important thing is to never give up." Martha made a point of personally replying to the letter, encouraging the woman to persist in her dreams. "Success isn't measured only in money," she wrote in her response. "If you manage to turn a difficult situation into an opportunity for a fresh start, you are already a winner." The correspondence between the two women continued for months, creating a long-distance friendship based on the identification of similar experiences. The following year brought new challenges and opportunities. A large multinational company proposed a partnership to expand the recycling model to countries in Latin America. "Mrs. Martha, your methodology could benefit millions of people in a situation similar to what you faced," explained the company representative. "It would be a huge responsibility, and I'm not young anymore. But you have something no international consultancy has: the credibility of someone who lived through the transformation you're proposing." After much reflection and conversations with Michael, her partner engineer, Martha decided to accept the challenge. But with one condition: Lily, now 12 years old, would participate in every step as a junior consultant. "She grew up in this environment, understands the process better than many adults, and has a fresh perspective that could be very valuable," Martha explained. The first pilot project was implemented in Mexico. Martha and Lily traveled to Mexico City to personally oversee the implementation of the community recycling center. It was the first time Lily had left Brazil. The girl was struck by the similarities between the social problems in Mexico and those she had seen in her own city. "Grandma, it's just like back home. People throw trash anywhere and don't know they can make money from it," she observed during a visit to an underprivileged community in Mexico City. "Exactly, my dear. Waste is a worldwide problem, but the solutions can also be universal." The project in Mexico was an absolute success. Within 6 months, the community had not only organized local recycling, but also created dozens of jobs and significantly improved the region's quality of life. The Brazilian model, adapted to local conditions, proved viable and replicable. Soon, invitations came to implement similar projects in Colombia, Argentina, and other countries. "Grandma, now we're international," Lily joked during a video conference with potential Mexican partners. "We sure are. Who would have thought 2 refugees from a garbage plot would become international consultants?" At 78, Martha had become one of the world's leading references in community recycling. International universities invited her to give lectures. Governments requested her consultancy, and non-governmental organizations sought partnerships, but she never lost her simplicity or forgot her origins. She continued living on the same plot where she had arrived desperate years before, only in a better-built house on the site where the precarious shed once stood. "This is my place," she would often say when asked why she hadn't moved to a mansion. "My new life started here, and here it will continue." Lily, now 13, had decided she wanted to study environmental engineering to continue the family's work. The girl spoke Portuguese, English, and Spanish fluently, a result of the international travels. "When I grow up, I'm going to improve even further the processes Grandma created," she said, with the confidence of someone who had grown up seeing that dreams can become reality. One day, during an afternoon walk through the complex, Martha stopped in front of a sign that Lily had installed at the main entrance. It read, "Hope Recycling Center, founded in year by Martha Higgins and Lily Higgins." "Why did you put my name together with yours, my little one?" "Because we did everything together, Grandma. I was here from the beginning, remember?" "Yes, I remember. You were a baby in my arms when we arrived here." "And now I'm your youngest partner in the world?" The girl laughed. "That's true. My partner and my greatest inspiration to keep going." That night, while organizing papers in the office, Martha found an old photo she had forgotten in a drawer. It was from the first day on the plot, taken by Mr. Joe with a disposable camera. In the photo, she looked thin and frightened, holding Lily as a baby, with the precarious shed and the mountains of trash in the background. The image contrasted drastically with the present reality. "Look at this, Lily," she showed the photo to her granddaughter. "That was the two of us on our first day here." Lily studied the image carefully. "Wow, Grandma, you looked so sad." "I was. I thought the world had ended for us." "But it was actually just beginning, right?" "Exactly. Sometimes endings are just beginnings in disguise." The girl took the photo and put it in an improvised frame. I'll put it in my room to always remember where we came from. That's a good idea. We should never forget our origins. At 79 years old, Martha received the most special invitation of her new career. The Brazilian government invited her to be the official ambassador for the National Community Recycling Program. Mrs. Martha, you have become a symbol of the Brazilian people's capacity for transformation, explained the minister during the nomination ceremony. Your story inspires millions of people not to give up in the face of difficulties. The position was mainly honorary, but it gave Martha an even larger platform to spread her ideas and methods. During her first official speech as ambassador, she made sure to highlight Lily's role in her journey. Many people ask me what gave me the strength to continue in the most difficult moments, she said from the podium of the packed auditorium. The answer is simple. I had a small granddaughter in my arms and the responsibility to show her that we should never give up on our dreams. The speech was widely publicized and went viral on social media, being shared millions of times with hashtags like #NeverGiveUp and #Trash2Treasure. Lily, now 14 years old and in her first year of high school, had become a minor celebrity in her own right. She regularly participated in television programs, gave lectures at schools, and had a blog about sustainability that attracted thousands of young readers. It's strange to be famous for growing up in the trash, she joked during an interview. But if our story can inspire other people, then it's worth it. The teenager's maturity and wisdom impressed everyone who met her. She had grown up seeing that problems can turn into opportunities, that honest work always pays off, and that age is never a barrier to starting over. One day, a young reporter asked Lily what her greatest life lesson was. I learned that there is no trash in the world, the girl replied without hesitation. There are resources that are in the wrong place, people who are in the wrong situation, opportunities that look like problems. Life is a matter of rearranging things until you find their true value. The answer was considered so profound that it became the subject of dissertations at several Brazilian and foreign universities. In the 10th year of the recycling complex's operation, Martha decided to organize a big celebration. This time, it wouldn't just be a party, but an international congress on community recycling. Experts from dozens of countries confirmed their attendance. The event would last 3 days and include technical lectures, practical workshops, and visits to the original complex. Grandma, you're going to speak to people from all over the world, exclaimed Lily, excited by the magnitude of the event. We are going to speak, my little one. You will also give a lecture on sustainability from the new generation's perspective. Me? But I'm only 15. Exactly why. You represent the future. And who better than you to talk about how to educate children and teenagers for environmental awareness? The Congress was an absolute success. Over 1,000 participants from 40 different countries spent 3 intense days learning, sharing experiences, and creating international collaboration networks. Lily's lecture was one of the most applauded at the event. The teenager spoke naturally about how she had grown up seeing trash turn into wealth, problems turn into opportunities, despair turn into hope. When I was little, she told the international audience, I thought everyone lived in a place full of trash like ours. Only later did I understand that our home was special because my grandma had a special vision. What vision? Asked a German participant. She saw possibilities where others saw only problems. She saw treasures where others saw only trash. And more importantly, she saw solutions where others saw only difficulties. The girl's answer was recorded and later used in dozens of documentaries and educational materials about social entrepreneurship. During the event, Martha received a special tribute, the creation of the Martha Higgins Medal, which would be awarded annually to people who excelled in social transformation projects through recycling. This medal is not mine, she said during her acceptance speech. It belongs to all the people who believed it was possible to transform trash into dignity, hopelessness into opportunity, abandonment into prosperity. At 80 years old, Martha had become a global sustainability icon. Her story was told in textbooks, her methodology was taught in universities, her example inspired public policies in dozens of countries. But for her, the greatest victory remained quite simple. She had managed to raise Lily with dignity, transform an abandoned place into a source of prosperity, and prove that it's never too late to start over. "You know what the best part of all this is?" she asked Lily during one of their afternoon walks through the complex. "What, Grandma?" "That it all started with people laughing at our situation. They thought we were finished, and we ended up showing that we were just beginning. And now we know that every ending can be a new beginning. Every problem can hide an opportunity. Every piece of trash can become a treasure." Lily smiled and held her grandmother's hand. "And every sad story can become a success story." "Exactly, my little one, exactly." The sun set once more over the recycling complex that had once been just an abandoned plot. But now it illuminated well-kept gardens, productive warehouses, people working with dignity, and 2 generations of women who had proven that determination can move mountains, or in their case, entire mountains of trash. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought of Martha's transformation and how she proved it's never too late to start over. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share your own stories of overcoming in the comments.